Hey, Witch Mob! Welcome to the Who Is This Crazy Hag podcast. We're on episode 11, and this takes place in Indonesia. The story is called Monkey Forest Barbershop. There are so many stories that when they happen, they're an absolute fucking disaster. But given some time, distance, and healing, they become funny stories, even if they weren't funny at the time. It's a gift to see the funny side of whatever catastrophe has overtaken your life. This entire book is created from a series of catastrophes, some of which took me a very long time to talk about. But in the end, they're my stories. The things that happened, the people I met, the places I went, are all part of my story, and I wouldn't be who I am today without them. Added to that, I have my father's sense of humour and the ability to turn any disaster into a comedy of errors. And so we begin. This week's shout-outs go to Jenny and her friends in Australia. Thanks for listening, guys. It's great to hear. Nathan and Liz in Denmark. And Caitlin and Nikki in the USA. Keep the comments coming. It's great to hear them. Secret Garden is a 5-star vegan and vegetarian restaurant where you can have an incredible chef-to-table experience for breakfast, lunch or dinner. Our chef is an expert in food allergies and intolerances and can cater to any dietary need from gluten, sugar or dairy-free to creating a low FODMAPs menu or catering to any other dietary requirements you have. Stop by Secret Garden for an amazing meal or order online and pick up anytime. Grab a dessert or an ice cream while you're there. Groups are welcome with a reservation and you can discuss a custom-made menu for your event with the chef. Secret Garden has an extensive menu with excellent prices and you won't be disappointed. Mention the Who Is This Crazy Hag podcast for a complimentary drink. And now, on to our story. Monkey Forest Barbershop. Oops, I'm so sorry. Gosh, are you all right? Said a tinkling, sing-song voice coming from the haze of humid air above my head. A hand reached out to touch my shoulder. Indifferent, I shrugged it off. The voice faltered, wavering slightly, with timid apprehension, as if it half expected me to get up and knock it over in angry retaliation. Yeah, I grunted, preferring to pick myself up off the dirt floor of the aromatic fish market. No real harm done. Inwardly cursing at my now dirty hands, covered in a nightmare of possibly fatal bacteria, I looked around the floor at the rapidly rolling lychees and snake-like salak fruit that were currently scaping the confines of the shopping bag I was holding before being run over. Salak grows on one of the prickliest vines on earth, and once you take off the crispy snake skin, the crunchy fruit inside tastes a little bit like apples and hazelnuts. It's actually pretty good. If you ever get a chance, try it. Oh no, you scraped your knee, said the voice, lower now, and sincerely apologetic. She had sent me flying melons over mangoes after charging blindly out of a barely concealed alleyway and slamming into me sideways. I'd been T-boned by a tall skinny chick in a bright orange sarong. Admittedly, she was a bit of a traffic stopper. As I stooped to pick up a few bits of fruit, I looked at my grazed knee. Oh well, I sighed, still wondering how many species of exotic bacteria might be lurking in the indescribable grime of the slimy market floor, all eager to fester into some sort of incurable disease, while I brushed ineffectually at the bleeding gash on my leg with equally filthy fingers. Good thing I've got another knee on the other leg that looks just like this one, only it's in better shape." The woman laughed. I grinned back, instantly ready to forgive her for accidentally bowling me over. I had landed on all fours, facing back the way I came, with my nose dangerously close to an enormous bucket of pungent fish guts that were probably earmarked for delivery to a nearby fertilizer factory. The vibrant street bazaar in Lampung district's friendly capital, Bandar Lampung, a developmental merging of the two cities, Tanjung Karang and Teluk Betung, located in the southern tip of the tropical island of Sumatra, was abuzz with activity. Aside from the wizened old lady, who appeared as if she was carved from wood until she moved to serve a customer, and in front of whose stall the mini fracas had occurred, no one stopped their early morning fish market mania to see what the two oddly dressed orang asing foreigners were doing in the middle of the fray. "Let me get you something for that," said the tall woman who knocked me over. "It's okay. I have disinfectant and Band-Aids in my bag at the hotel. I'll clean it up when I get back," I told her, repeatedly assuring her that I would be all right, while simultaneously considering the devastating effects that the recent influx of healthy, hyperactive microorganisms might have on a freshly opened wound. "I'm Janice," the woman introduced herself. "Again, I'm really sorry. Hey, are you hungry? Let's go somewhere we can sit down." "Starved," I replied after telling her my name. "I could eat the crotch out of a low-flying duck." "Ew!" And thus our friendship began. After traipsing through the untamed jungles of Kalimantan, I zipped across to Singapore for a few days for a quick shot of sanity, a decent feed of sweet and sour pork, and some wildly unabashed nightlife, with the intention of scoring another 60-day visa on my return to Indonesia. Bopping around Sumatra had been on my list of things to do with the limited time I had in Indonesia, and now I had 2 more months up my sleeve, giving me enough time to soak up an even larger portion of the equatorial tropics before I started heading north to Malaysia and then on to my final travel destination, Thailand. Over a sumptuous lunch of grilled chicken satay sticks dipped in gooey, spicy peanut sauce, accompanied by lots of fresh, crunchy gado-gado, steamed vegetable salad with peanut dressing, and a huge plate of tasty nasi goreng, the ubiquitous fried rice of Indonesia, Janice told me she had 4 weeks to travel around Sumatra before her project deadline loomed, and she had to be back in Jakarta for work. She had literally just got off the boat and was particularly interested in seeing the Pugung Raharjo archaeological site. Janice was a beautiful woman, right out of the pages of a glossy magazine, and I wondered if she was a model. She did have all the right tools for the job, except the pout and the attitude. "No," she smiled at my timid question. "I'm a bioengineer." When I stared blankly, eyebrows raised high, she explained further. "Put simply, I design crash test dummies." Well, that could explain our initial meeting, making me the crash test dummy. Right, I thought, brains and beauty. Some people obviously score well in both cues. Everywhere we went, men of all ages stopped dead in the street to stare at Janice. Most of the time, I felt like an ugly old Medusa standing beside this exquisite woman with my snaky hair, orange peel skin, and daggy, ragged clothes. She caused traffic jams just crossing the street. When a staring teenage boy rammed his bicycle straight into the back of a parked car and tumbled head over heels across the top of the vehicle. My shoulders shuddered with uncontained mirth. But Janice felt sorry for the poor distracted bugger. "Are you okay?" she asked the humiliated kid, who promptly fled on foot to prevent any further personal degradation. Shimmering black hair cascaded down her back, reaching the top of her firm round buttocks. She epitomized good health with her silky smooth skin and golden all-over tan. Flashing green eyes, a small pert nose, a killer smile with brilliant white teeth, and a stunningly contoured face melted men in the streets. Long tapered legs with well-toned muscles glided gracefully around busy Bandar Lampung, their flawless knees peeking out from the folds of a collection of bright batik sarongs. Her firm, strong arms didn't wobble when she waved. Her ripe, melon-shaped breasts nestled just so under her top. Even her feet were perfect. Janice was every man's wet dream. She was also a wonderfully adventurous character with a great sense of humour. And I had a girl crush on her. Actually, she's probably the only girl crush I've ever had on a normal person who wasn't a rock star. Over oodles of delicious fried noodles at the night markets every evening after a few manic days, touring around the bustling city together, negotiating our way through traffic, taxi drivers and touts, to visit such must-sees as the museum and the monument of the Krakatau eruption, Janice and I became good friends and Sumatran travel buddies, comparing tuppies, woven fabric, interwoven with shimmering gold thread wherever we went. Travelling through picturesque coffee and oil palm plantations and rolling orchards of pepper trees and yellow-green clove trees, we detoured on the route to Waikambas to visit Janice's treasured megalithic sculptures, which included an unusual bodhisattva statue. "Amazing," breathed Janice, awed by the fascinating history that surrounded us. We trudged around several of the stepped pyramid-like temples, explored the remains of a fortified settlement, and optimistically drank mineral water from the renowned Fountain of Youth. I should mention that this was over 30 years ago, and I don't recommend anyone drink anything from any public fountains where thousands of people go to drink, regardless of your desire to live forever. At the Museum of Pugung Raharjo, we studied the 7th century curse, reportedly a Srivijayan inscription, and explored the remaining walls and canals of the old civilization which housed the ancestral stones before making our way to the elephant training centre in Waikambas, where we observed as elephants underwent a series of training exercises and then played a variation of football. The elephants seemed well treated. 30 years ago, we had no idea how bad it can be for elephants being trained for tourism. But I want to make it clear we did not ride these elephants. Impressive, we agreed, both thinking about food again. It was one of our shared obsessions. After lunch, Janice was marching along beside me, looking around at all the elephant training activity, and suddenly found herself ankle-deep in a pile of steaming, splushy elephant poo. "I didn't see it," she cried, as she tried in vain to scrape the stinking mess off her legs and shoes with a flimsy twig. "How can you not see a humongous pile of elephant dung?" Failing to find any shreds of sympathy for her unhappy plight, I roared laughing, almost falling over into several warm dollops of solid grassy elephant poop that lay in wait nearby. "Some friend you are," Janice teased afterwards, grateful that one of the goggle-eyed animal trainers had helped clean up her beautiful feet and sodden walking shoes before sweet-talking her into a leisurely cruise on the Waikanan River. Sumatra is as tropical as the world gets, straddling two climatic zones cut by the equator into equal halves. It's also known as the Africa of Asia for its dazzling flora and weird and wonderful fauna. The wild jungles of Sumatra are home to a rich variety of wildlife, from several species of primates to Asian elephants and hairy two-horned Sumatran rhinos, as well as deer, wild boars, civet cats, Malaysian tapirs, the rare and endangered Sumatran tiger, and a frightening variety of extremely large snakes. Amazing Sumatran flora includes the giant sci-fi-like Rafflesia arnoldi flower with its lurid red petals and pungent odor of rotting meat, and the Vanda hegriana. Amazon-like rivers writhe and swirl through the jungle under dense canopies of natural rainforest, from the steamy interiors to muddy mangrove estuaries. As if this wasn't enough encouragement to stay on the island forever, long white sandy beaches fringed with fir trees enticed us to their magical seashores. When we ran out of oohs and ahs, we stood utterly gobsmacked at the awesome magnitude of the beauty that constantly took our breath away. Sumatra's turbulent history, dating back to the Srivijaya Empire in the 7th century, was fascinating, especially since Marco Polo was the island's first Western visitor. The Portuguese, Dutch, and British had all traipsed through, leaving their own legacies, however misguided and ill-fitted, to the moist tropical climate. Janice and I were in raptures, our attention leaping like pebbles in a slingshot from one era to another as we absorbed information, studying with interest each of the historical facts pertinent to our immediate surrounds. Fortunately, we were also of like minds. After our initial enthusiasm to experience all things Sumatran while we had the chance, I also wanted to chill and do lots and lots of nothing, following my long, arduous trek across the unexplored wilds of Kalimantan. Janice wanted to lie in the sun with a book and top up her already perfect tan. We headed straight for Nala and Panjang beaches, 3 kilometers west of the provincial capital, Bengkulu. Our most strenuous activity was wandering around the 18th century British fort Maliboro, named after Marlborough, and the Old City. White sands stretch for 7 kilometers along the coast, shaded by spruce firs. From our bungalow, we watched the fishing boats come in each morning, making the enormous effort to pick up our books and read all day when we weren't splashing energetically in the vast Indian Ocean. A friendly fisherman threw a live, still wriggling fish for me to catch on our second morning on the beach as a gift for lunch. Despite being ready for the catch, I missed, and the slimy, scaly critter landed on Janice's neck and slid straight down her loose singlet top. "Ah!" she screeched, jumping around and flapping her arms, while I collapsed in a fit of uncontrollable giggles on the sand, as concerned and sympathetic as ever. Yes, I'm absolutely the friend who will fall over and laugh my ass off if something really dumb happens to you. The story spread quickly along the beach. Every man in the village would have killed to be that fish for just 2 seconds. The local fishermen were eager for an encore, and we dined lavishly on fresh-caught fish cooked in countless fabulous ways for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, until we had seafood coming out of our ears. Delighted with such delicious fare, Janice soon forgave my slippery fingers. Regardless of the sneers of cynical wives, the ever-hopeful fishermen continued to try their luck every day without any further success of navigating Janice's increasingly popular cleavage. After 5 days of doing absolutely nothing, I needed to move again. Actually, I think 5 whole days is probably my record for voluntarily sitting still. Normally active, I wasn't capable of sitting still for long. Sharing a sweltering grass-roofed cabin with legions of cockroaches gradually took its toll on my fragile sanity. "Jungle trek, anyone?" I asked, somehow forgetting the agonies of undertaking such an exertive enterprise. "Let's go," Janice agreed. We packed our bongos and headed towards Lake Toba. Jumping on a local bus, my companion and I made our way along the coast as trucks, cars and motorbikes veered wildly off the roads when the maniacal bus drivers in their dilapidated machines tooted, swerved and zigzagged across the tarmac. Buses ruled. Passengers, squashed like sardines into the overstuffed vehicle, vomited out the windows. "Gosh, I think I'm going to throw up," groaned Janice, holding a handkerchief to her sensitive nose. Despite the overpowering aroma of the endless stream of travel vomit, I tried hard to concentrate on the breathtakingly beautiful coastal road twisting through a succession of stunning bays crowded with outrigger fishing boats. From within the rancid fishbowl-like atmosphere, I hung out the window as far as I could without being decapitated by passing trucks, and watched thundering waves crash onto beach after beach as the bus whizzed past, oblivious to its own inner chaos. "Bleh," came the gut-wrenching sound of someone losing their nasi goreng as the bus wound along the narrow, twisting road past ecologically disastrous palm oil plantations. We lumbered over hills and past rice paddies on flat coastal plains interspersed with lush patches of dense rainforest to break up the rural scenery. As we neared Padang, the overwhelming stench of a passing rubber truck made the malodorous air inside the bus seem like a perfume factory. A small child puked copiously down our sweat-drenched backs, his mother vomiting helplessly out the window as the boy leaned forward over the seat to violently purge his stomach contents over our already soggy and stinking clothes. Janice and I alighted at Padang and immediately found a place near the bus station where we could adequately clean up. "I smell like a dead camel," I complained, making a beeline for the bathroom. "I must smell like a sewerage plant," Janice said, wrinkling her pretty nose and delicately pulling the sodden fabric of her shirt away from her skin. We dipped our towels into a shallow bird bath style mandi, scrubbed our grimy faces and our sweaty spewed on bodies as best we could and changed our clothes, discarding the soiled batik sarongs and tie-dyed t-shirts we were wearing. A mandi is a large open tub of fresh water inside a bathroom. There's usually a jug or a bucket you can use to throw water over yourself to bathe. The one we encountered was quite small. Then we rinsed out our slippery leather sandals and washed other people's vomit off our sticky, dusty feet. "Hungry?" Janice asked, despite her most recent traumatic experience. "Always," I answered, my iron-clad gut not the slightest bit perturbed by rivers of puke. Checking that our stomachs were fully prepared for another flavoursome riot, we studied the cafe's short handwritten menu and ordered a late lunch that consisted of several small dishes featuring the region's famously spicy cuisine. Gado-gado literally translates to mix in English. It's a plate of raw and cooked vegetables served with tofu and or tempeh and a spicy peanut sauce. And after overdosing on nasi goreng, this was my next food addiction. Do you think people choose food depending on how some food will taste coming back out? Janice asked as we waited for our food. No, I said, shuddering with disgust. Then I wondered if there were many people in the world who used this criterion for choosing their meals, like the nauseous passengers who had been on the previous bus. Ew! Soon afterward, we boarded the rickety bus that would take us to Bukit-Tinggi. Gradually, the old jalopy puffed and humped over the Bukit Barisan mountain ridge, past an impressive wall of steaming tropical rainforest. Sweat dripped from our faces as the familiar earthy scent of the deep jungle tickled our noses. In the beautiful city of Bukit-Tinggi, in the Minangkabau highlands, was a pleasant 2-hour drive from Padang through the gorgeous Anai Valley and up to Agam Plateau. The historical remains of Fort de Kock were a good starting point for a hiking trip to the stunning canyon beside the city, and also Kota Gadang, where silversmiths craft fine filigree and women hand-broider intricate shawls. So let's go back to Fort de Kock for a minute. That's Kock with a K, O-C-K, so get your minds out of the gutter, people. We gazed in awe at the spectacular view over Narai Sihanouk Canyon at Panorama Park before descending into the colourful mosaic of the rocky abyss. Back in town, we ate some of the most impressive gado-gado in the whole region and hunted down bargains amidst a beehive of activity at the lively Pasar Atas in Market Square. "Is this me?" Janice asked, donning a colourful scarf. It has Janice written all over it. A high footbridge took us, with shaking knees, over the main street to the Rumah Gadang Museum, a traditional longhouse where we admired the vast collection of Minangkabau history, art and culture. At the pitiful quote-unquote zoo, we sympathised with sadly neglected animals housed in tiny cages and left with no food or water. "You poor thing, what have they done to you?" Janice chatted with the flea-infested ageing orangutan, who brazenly slapped her on the rump as she turned to walk away. Even the primates thought she was a looker. "Look at these appalling conditions," Janice said angrily. "Who's running this dreadful place?" Marching resolutely toward a building that looked more like a dilapidated outhouse than an office, Janice located the errant zookeeper and gave the bedraggled-looking chimp of a man a largish piece of her mind. He probably didn't understand a word of her angry, heavily punctuated American English, accompanied by wild gesticulations in the direction of the poorly maintained cages, but by the time she was through, she had most certainly left an impression of some description on the man's mind. While he stared dumbfounded and cross-eyed at her bouncing cleavage for over 20 minutes, I wasn't sure the impression she made was exactly the type she intended to leave. In my humble opinion, the man did not seem to have any grasp of the horrific reality of the ghastly situation. By the time Janice left Sumatra, I was convinced I had been travelling with a closet Dr. Dolittle. She attracted wild beasts of all varieties from every direction. The majority of them seemed to treat her as gently and respectfully as if she were one of their own. The standout exception was the male gender of the human species, who fell over themselves gawping, then worshipped the woman as if she were some kind of mysterious goddess. One of the most beautiful spots in Sumatra is Lake Maninjau. We followed the mountain road up to Matur, where it snaked, twisted and dived through 44 sharp hairpin bends, some with spectacular views over the crater lake. After I tripped and landed face down in the thick brush, the ostentatious beginning of a symbiotic relationship with the lush tropical vegetation, we picnicked for lunch, then swam and relaxed in the hot springs before heading north to Bonjol, a small town situated right on the equator. On the road between Bukit-Tinggi and Bonjol, we stopped at Palupu to visit the Rafflesia Arnoldi Sanctuary. Famous for its disgusting smell, Raffles' pooey petals didn't let us down. "Oh, yuck!" we cried simultaneously, blocking our noses as we neared the infamous flower. "Phew!" The Rafflesia is famous for being the largest flower on earth and one of the stinkiest. The flower only blooms every few years and only lasts for a few days, so we were fortunate to be there when it did. A local guide had recommended we visit while we had the chance, and while I can't say I have any regrets, I'm happy to never see it again. The stench of rotting carcasses reached us long before we got anywhere near the huge crimson bloom. While we were observing the eye-wateringly hideous flora, a nasty-looking bug crawled up Janice's leg. She did an exotically wild freak dance, screaming her head off, her long limbs flying in all directions, until the poor creature fell off her shuddering thigh and scarpered under a nearby rock. It took everything I had to keep a straight face and not laugh out loud. That charade lasted all of 10 seconds, until I smirked unintentionally and, before I knew it, collapsed under a pile of uncontrollable and wildly hysterical giggles. "That wasn't funny," sobbed Janice, sweating profusely and red in the face from fear or maybe embarrassment. It may also have been the nauseating smell of the Rafflesia. However, between us, we seemed to be performing our own Shakespearean comedy of hilarious errors. Crossing the equator at Bonjol, we braved the erratic buses again and went north to Lake Toba, one of the largest and deepest lakes in Asia. Lake Toba sits 1,000 meters above sea level, skirting the densely populated island of Samosir. The dormant volcano had blown off its top and was now filled with water. After snaking down the wooded slopes of the volcano wall on a dramatic scenic road into the ancient caldera, we checked into the Fleabag Hotel, where Comrade Bedbug and his guerrilla platoon of ferocious commando bedbugs were merciless in their night-long attack on a long-awaited enemy. In the aftermath of the vicious bloodbath, the head-scratching hotel manager sprayed our mattresses with something that smelled as if it would be in good company on the back of a reeking rubber truck, right next to Raffles' obnoxious flower. "Cripes, I feel like an itching Morse code in transit," I muttered as we fled the hotel. Covered in a series of symmetrical dots and dashes, we traversed the narrow isthmus of land to see the sights on the picturesque island of Samosir in the middle of the mirror-like lake, touristic tuk-tuk, the king's tomb in Tomok, megalithic stone execution tables in Ambarita, a performance of traditional Batak dance in Simanindu, hot springs in Pangururan, and the amazing Sipiso Piso Falls. The spectacular sights and sounds were like a cool salve on our wounds. That night, exhausted from our enthusiastic exertions during the day, a good traditional Indonesian meal, and a chilled bottle of anggur cured all our remaining ills. Anggur is basically red wine, like a crude red wine made from grapes. The striking volcano lake looks strangely mysterious in the dawn light, with wispy mists hanging over the forest canopy on the far shore. A day later, I woke early to find an enormous python coiled into a tight ring under my bed. "Holy slithering sandals," I whispered to myself, gently easing my feet off the floor, ever mindful of waking the snoozing reptile. "Psst," I mumbled under my breath, hoping to quietly get Janice's attention. "Psst." I thought we might be able to sneak out unharmed and get someone to come and relocate the huge creature. Naturally, not proceeding according to plan, Janice woke with a teeth-clenching jingle of silver bracelets and yawned loudly. "Hey, good morning, what's up?" "Shh, snake," I whispered, pointing under my bed, while signaling her to keep the noise down. I would have been more successful trying to stop the sun from rising. "Ah!" she shrieked, fleeing the room barefoot, wearing only the tiny lacy knickers and skin-tight t-shirt she always slept in, waking everyone within 10 kilometers, including the now agitated snake. Since I met Janice, uncomfortably close encounters with misplaced wild animals had become one of the main features of our trans-Sumatran trip. We ascended into the Karo highlands through pineapple, clove, and ginger plantations along a scenic route to the mountain village of Berastagi. 2 active volcanoes, Sibayak and Sinabung, dominate the quaint Karo Batak village. I blankly refused to climb any more volcanoes. Janice wanted to go to the Gunung Leuser National Park to see some wildlife. Clearly, she was under the strange impression that we hadn't seen enough of the local fauna. "You don't get much closer to a wild python than waking up with one," I subtly reminded her, to no avail. "It's the monkeys I want to see," she explained patiently. Torrential rain made travel to the interior impossible the first morning, so we wandered around in the warm rain and went to the colourful fruit market. Then visited a traditional Karo Batak village in Pekaren when the deluge let up a little. The Orangutan Rehabilitation Centre in Bukit Lawang was a half-hour climb underneath a green blanket of thick rainforest canopy through a stand of giant trees over 200 feet tall and past some enchanting picture book waterfalls covered with moss. We stayed in a fly spot of a village on the banks of the fast-flowing Bohorok River in a rickety guest house built on stilts leaning precariously out over the water. Blocking up all the possible entrances to deter unexpected night visitors, we drifted off to sleep in the rustic jungle environment to the musical sounds of the rushing river below. "This is life," I mused, listening to the water cascading beneath our beds. The following morning, as we set off on our short uphill journey, a colourful flock of squawking birds flew out of the bushes into our faces and startled us, and also the newlywed couple bringing up the rear. "I think I've seen enough wildlife in Sumatra to last me a lifetime," I grumbled as my erratic heartbeat slowly returned to normal. The only creatures we hadn't encountered face to face so far were Sumatran tigers and hairy little rhinos. Based on our previous experiences, I had no doubt either one of those critters would come racing out of the jungle to chew on our exposed limbs or stamp us out at any second. "Shh," insisted our guide. "We must do quietly. Very, very." Silent, we plodded through the wilderness toward the monkey forest to see the orangutans in their natural environment. The old men of the forest clung tenaciously to their threatened rainforest habitat. Large nests of twigs, branches, and leaves perched in the trees high above our heads. Sumatran orangutans have light hair and thin faces, while Borneo orangutans have dark hair and skin and long fingers. From prior treks through monkey-inhabited rainforests, I knew to keep all food, sunglasses, shiny things, etc. out of sight, and to zip up my bag before securing it tightly to my body. Indonesian monkeys of all varieties were rapacious thieves and became dangerous when provoked. They'll steal anything not bolted down: hats, wallets, bags, and sunglasses. They'll grab t-shirts and people's arms and laugh, making sounds with their lips so you think they're cute while they're ripping you off. I was kept busy that morning, being aware. The jungle was filled with the awa-awa call of gibbons. Siamungs yelped imbu, while langurs coughed and hiccuped at each other. Long-tailed macaques with shocks of sandy red hair atop their little heads peeked out from behind trees. We crept through the jungle, using only rough hand signals to communicate as we neared a thickly populated area. In a small clearing, we sat still and waited. Monkeys leapt from vines, swinging and leaping between branches overhead. After what seemed like an hour, an orangutan appeared in the bushes in front of us. We didn't move. She wandered around with her baby on her back and then took off up a tree. Janice's excitement was clearly indicated in her eyes. The experience was breathtaking, and I felt the same way. We decided to stay for a while in case she came back. Several little monkeys started playing nearby, and we watched them for a while before a maverick mini monkey came and cuddled up to Janice. These furry little critters seemed to be used to humans and weren't worried by us being there. Janice's monkey climbed onto her shoulders and started grooming her plaited hair. The mischievous juvenile chattered and wriggled around on her shoulders while she watched the other monkeys at play. No one spoke as more curious primates gathered around us. We sat in the jungle for a few hours, content to sit quietly and watch the monkeys play and eat, groom each other, and sleep. Hornbills called in the distance. Gibbons sang, and monkeys teased and fought with each other. We stayed longer than usual, enraptured by the creatures that came close and treated us gently. When we finally left, at the insistence of our long-suffering guide, Janice was walking ahead of me. Through the darkness of the jungle, I noticed her hair looked a bit funky. Fumbling along the poorly lit path, losing the light as we raced to beat the sunset, I assumed it was simply the weird light causing a strange optical illusion. It wasn't until we reached the edge of the jungle and came out onto the riverbank that the awful truth was revealed. The cheeky little rascal that sat on Janice's head, presumably grooming her scalp, had sneakily chewed off the top of her hair. Short black spikes stuck out all over her crown. Her gorgeous locks had been shorn off by a monkey. Only the sides had been left long. "I don't know how to tell you this," I began, not sure how she would react. Janice was devastated. She put her hands on her head, felt the damage, and howled. Her hands filled with the severed locks of her own beautiful hair, and she cried her heart out. By the time we reached the village, the distraught woman calmed herself down a bit, but she was still extremely upset. When we arrived back at the guest house, the manager gaped in disbelief. His eyes darted from Janice's eyes to her pruned head. "What happened to you?" he asked Janice worriedly, also looking across at me for answers. Brooding silence was the best she could manage under the circumstances. Teeth gritted, she stalked off to our room, muttering something about getting scissors to finish the job. Unable to accompany her, for fear of being blasted through the floor, and in imminent danger of bursting into the most inappropriate giggles in the history of bad hair design, I waited until she was out of earshot to explain to the manager. My heart truly went out to her, but at the same time, as usual, I could see the funny side of what had happened eons before everyone else. Eventually, I hoped Janice would laugh about it too. After all, she would still be gorgeous if she was totally bald and wearing an old garbage bag. As for me, I couldn't hold on any longer. The hotel manager cleared his throat, reminding me that he was still there, still waiting for an answer. I chuckled, letting the bottled laughter go, and once again displaying all the caring sympathy of a charging rhinoceros. "She's been given a haircut."
Hey there, love bugs! Welcome to the jungle! I'm Nancy Miarelli, your guide to the ecological and entomological, i.e. bug, wonders of Ecuador. With my master's in entomology and a passion for ecology and conservation, I'm here to take you on an unforgettable adventure through the mega diverse forests and more lush than you may have expected mountainsides of Ecuador. This year, I'm excited to offer 2 unique science-focused tours. Join me for a nature journaling course where we'll sit in the grass, sketch, observe, and reflect on all the creatures and plants that we discovered. Or dive deep into evolutionary theory on my evolution tour, where you'll see what you learned in a book that one time growing on the side of a tree. Ready to embark on a journey of discovery? Visit www.scibugs.info, that is Scibugs, SCIBUGS, to learn more or find me, Scibugs, everywhere on the internet. Let's explore Ecuador and all it has to offer together.
That might have been an story for Janice, but it was definitely a ha story for me. I feel like the point of this story is that anything can happen anywhere at any time. I'd have never met Janice if she hadn't knocked me on my ass at the market. We'd probably have never ended up in the monkey forest together either. If you do go into a monkey forest in Indonesia or anywhere else, make sure you're wearing a hat. Next week, we're headed to Turkey for some underground hijinks. Join us then. See ya. Do you have any crazy travel stories? What's the most insane thing that happened to you while you were on the road? If you'd like to share, send an MP3 recording of your story or write it into an email and send it to thewitchmob@gmail.com, and it could feature in a future episode. Don't forget to pick up your Who Is This Crazy Hag stickers and totes from Redbubble. Links are in the show notes. The Who Is This Crazy Hag podcast is created, written, read, produced, edited, mixed and published by Ronnie. If you'd like to grab a copy of Few Are Oo, find the paperback on Amazon or email thewitchpod@gmail.com to get an ebook. Also, let us know via email or on Blue Sky at The Witch Pod if you're reading in a book club or a group of friends so we can give you a shout out. Don't forget to tell us where you are in the world. You can visit the Witch Pod on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music and Castbox, and also Substack and Patreon. See you next week.